Salutations! Hello! Welcome to another Dreadlocks question and answer video. Each week I answer your questions, well, I try to answer them to the best of my ability. First question this week comes courtesy of Andrew Via. Question: so I have 2-month-old dreads and I like the way most are developing, but there are two things bothering me. Because my hair was not evenly cut when I started them, a lot of the shorter dreads have come out and I've tried to tighten them a few times, but will they eventually dread? The second problem is my sectioning. At first I wanted really clean sectioning, but now you can see my scalp. I figure it's a good thing because they're not growing together, but I'd rather my scalp not be exposed. Will this eventually happen? Right, so you're finding that the longer hair is working better than the shorter hair, and that's because when you start dreads with more hair, with longer hair, there is more opportunity for more knots. So if you're doing backcombing, you'll be able to backcomb more knots into longer hair than shorter hair. If you're doing twist and rip, you'll be able to fit more knots with longer hair than shorter hair. So that is why the longer the hair, the better, because the less likely it's going to be to just wash straight out, and that appears to be a little bit of a problem that you're having with the shorter hair. It will eventually dread if you leave it alone long enough, but if it's completely out of its sectioning, then it's just going to dread as it wants. You might want to keep an eye on that if you don't want those dreads to go sort of neglect and look different from your other dreads, you know, different shapes and sizes and stuff. Exposed scalp, that is quite common with young dreads because when you start dreads, they all tend to pull quite tight at the scalp at the start, and this causes the lines to be exposed. As the dreadlocks grow out a bit, they get more loose there and it'll just sort of lay flat as if it was normal hair. It generally will cover up all the section lines with messiness, provided that you're not maintaining tight at the root to cause all the hairs to pull tightly into the dread. Then the section lines will go away unless you have someone like pulling the dreads apart and looking right down on your scalp. Question 2. Jill Vevers. Question: is there a way of splitting a really large dread in half? Splitting one thick dread into 2 dreadlocks is not something that I recommend really. I've seen when people have just cut up the middle and got 2 dreads and it seemed to work okay for them. The problem is when you've got one thick dread, you've got hairs coming out of the scalp and then the hair goes all around the inside of the dread down to the tip. If you cut up the middle, you're going to be severing the connections between the root and the tip in some spots. I mean, obviously some parts of the dread are still going to be connected to the root and some parts here and there. And while it's not going to cause your dreadlock to break off from the root because it's still growing out the roots, they're not going to be as strong because, you know, you're going to have random bits of hair that aren't actually connected to anything at either end. So if you do choose to just cut a dread up the middle, you will get 2 dreadlocks out of it, but those 2 halves are not going to be as strong as 2 individual dreads would have been. Now when I've seen this done, it has been done to like really thick dreads, so like when a Congo has formed of epic proportions and someone has just wanted to split it back up into separate dreads to avoid like a beaver tail. If it is just one kind of thick dread, you're gonna end up with 2 kind of thin, weak dreads. Ideally, if at all possible, I think it's better to brush the dread out and then reform it as 2 separate dreadlocks, and then you're going to get 2 dreadlocks that are as strong as they should be. I know it's annoying to have to brush out a dread, it's not all that fun, but it may be better in the long run. Question 3. Laura Paige-Rowell. Question: I've had my dreads since July and some of them are starting to do this zigzag thing because of how hair grows. Did your dreads do that? When dreadlocks tighten up, they don't tighten up evenly. One side is going to pull more than the other side and then you're going to get all these weird shapes. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing for a lot of people, but it is a sign that the dread is tightening up. To answer your question, no, I did not really get a whole lot of that. And that's because of the unique way in which I decided to have my dreadlocks originally formed. They were backcombed as tight as you could possibly backcomb, and then because I had them started at a salon and had wax put on them, they never loosened up, so they were compressed, stayed like rocks, and never really did anything else. So there was no shrinking, and because there was no shrinking, there was no zigzagging. The zigzagging and lumping, bumping only occurs when the dreadlock shrinks, so you only get it in the original length of hair, and only if that hair actually has any compressing to do, and since mine didn't, I did not really have a whole lot of that going on. Some people out there might be thinking, hey, that's how you get out of having lumps and bumps, but no, you don't want to do that because you end up with dreads that are formed thicker than the new growth, so they're more like clubs and not good. 4. Kai Mansfield. Question: my dreadlocks have locked up now, but their tips are coming undone. Help me. Some people's dreadlocks will naturally blunt at the tips. most don't. And so for a lot of people, if your dreadlocks have not blunted by themselves, you are going to have to physically work to blunt them. Again, this is going to work better for some people than others. You can use tip rubbing, crocheting is a more permanent method for doing it. But if it just won't hold, then it won't hold. There's no secret method, you just have to persevere. So you either have to keep tip rubbing or you have to keep crocheting until it holds. Unfortunately, I don't have a secret special tip there. Secret special tip for your tips. Question 5, my Facebook question this week. The most liked question on my Facebook status. Cassandra Joe asks, about how long should I wait before I wrap my dreads? I've heard that if I wrap them too early, they can take a lot longer to mature than the ones that aren't wrapped. It depends how you're going to wrap them. If you're just going to sort of spiral some string around the outside or even sew it through a little bit, that is not going to make a whole lot of difference because the string will move as the hair moves. What can make a difference is if you do like the full wrap, like the whole sleeve that some people put on their dreads, like colourful material sleeves on the dreads. And that is going to affect the way the dreadlock forms because it can stop the dreadlock shrinking in the same way that it would normally because it's, you know, inside the sleeve, and it's not going to get the same sort of attention from rubbing on things in your day-to-day life. And so that can slow down the maturation of the dreadlock compared to the ones that are not wrapped in that way. The upside is a lot of people find that when they wrap their dreadlocks like that, the dreads don't get as lumpy and bumpy because they're kind of held in place, but it would be up to you whether you'd want to, you know, make that exchange. If you're really worried about having wrapping slowing down the process of the dreads, then you're going to want to wait until the dreads have fully matured, because putting something as constrictive as a full-length wrap on any dreads that are not fully matured yet will affect how they grow. How much it affects them is going to depend on the dreadlock itself and what you wrap it with, but it is something that you're going to have to decide for yourself and, you know, decide which thing, which path. I've lost words, but you have to decide which one, what works best for you. Those are my questions for this week. If you would like to ask me a question to answer in a video, you have two options. You can either post the question in the comment section of one of my Q&A videos, preferably the latest one, and write question at the start of your comment. If you don't write question, I'll just reply to it with a text comment. Or each week on the Lazy Dreads Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/LazyDreads. On a Tuesday, I'll post up a status asking for questions, and then whichever question as a reply to that status gets the most likes will get answered that week, I promise, unless it is some sort of crude, horrific, horrendous question that is just unanswerable. If you liked the video, like it. If you'd like to see more, then you can subscribe if you'd like. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you again soon. Farewell!